Hi friends, I am starting an experiment to grow tomatoes in Aerogarden Harvest Slim. This variety is called Aztek. These are yellow tomatoes and this is a micro dwarf variety. The plants naturally stays under 1 feet. Let's see how this is going to work out in Aerogarden Harvest. It's very straightforward to start this experiment. I'm placing 2 seeds in each pod and starting with 2 pods. Even though these are micro dwarf tomatoes, I'm going to grow only 2 plants in this harvest. Less is always better and more successful. Alright, this garden is all set. As always, I will add water, but I will not add nutrition. I will start adding nutrition once I see the seedlings. This garden is all set and good to go. It's been 9 days. I see the seedlings in both pots. They are coming nice. Now that I see the seedlings, I will start adding the nutrition. I will use Aerogarden nutrition throughout this grow cycle and I will use it as recommended, which is 8 ml at every feeding cycle. It's day 30. The plants are coming excellent. They are growing very healthy. They are staying very short. They are about 4 inches, probably 5 inches tall. And they're developing side branches. They're growing exactly like how micro dwarf cherry tomatoes grow, like Tiny Tim or Aerogarden's red cherry. That's really good. And I see some flower buds. They're super tiny, but I can see them. So it's started. It's day 40. Both plants are doing excellent and they started producing flower buds. And there are lots of flower buds. Look at all these flower buds. Same thing on the other plant. There are lots of flower buds. This is really nice journey so far. It's day 42. The plants started flowering. Look at these flowers. There are a couple of them on this plant. The other plant just getting started on the flowering. They are not opened yet, but they are pretty close. It's day 57. Look at these plants. Oh my god, so much flowering. These plants are much productive than I thought. And look at these baby tomatoes already. Wow, these are really good, very productive. Let's see how many of these flowers will survive and eventually turn into tomatoes. But I'm really loving these clusters. Very good clusters, and there are so many clusters with so many flowers on each cluster. Wonderful progress so far. It's day 74. Look at these plants. They are loaded with tomatoes and they are still growing and still producing lots of flowers. Look at this fresh growth. That's really nice. They are growing really well. Some flowers are not surviving. Look at these plants. They are yellowing, so they are going to die. They are going to fall off, but that's fine. Maybe the plants are overloaded. As I see lots of tomatoes all over the plants, they are probably getting overloaded and some of the flowers are not surviving. Look at these flowers. They are gone. But that's fine. They still have lots of tomatoes, so I'm happy with that. It's day 82. The tomatoes are growing nice. They haven't started ripening yet. I'm waiting for them to start changing some colors. Look at all these clusters. But this is still not a great productivity compared to the number of flower buds it produced. Look at this flower cluster. None of the flowers survived on this cluster. The same thing with many clusters. Look at all these clusters. There are so many clusters of flower buds, but none of them are really surviving. Very few tomatoes or very few flowers are surviving. That's a little bit of disappointing. I got very excited when I looked at these flower clusters, but many of the flower clusters are just giving up or just 1 or 2 tomatoes surviving there. But that's okay. If all these tomatoes survive and ripen well and taste good, that will be a good news. Nowadays, these plants are drinking lots of water and they are emptying the bowl. They are emptying the bowl at least once completely between the feeding cycles. So every time when I refill the bowl, I'm adding about 5 ml of Aerogarden nutrients in addition to the regular feeding cycle, because I don't want these plants growing on plain water. So adding about 5 ml of additional nutrients in between the regular feeding cycles is going to keeping the plants up and grow well. It's day 93. Plants are looking good, but I still don't see any tomatoes getting into ripening. They reached to their matured size for a long time and they're just hanging there. Look at these tomatoes. None of them showing ripening signs. But the plant is looking healthy and still showing lots of new development. So it's all going well. If it is a tiny tim tomato variety, I would have harvested a couple of tomatoes by now already. Anyway, every variety is different and every plant is different. Patience really matters with gardening, so I'm going to wait and see. It's day 112. I'm finally seeing a couple of tomatoes started ripening. They're looking so beautiful with bright yellow color. I don't know if these tomatoes are ready to harvest. I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to monitor them closely. They're pretty hard at this point. Normally tomatoes get little softer as they are ripening, so I'm going to watch it closely, and whenever I feel comfortable I'm going to start harvesting. It is little hard to know what is the exact time to harvest these yellow or orange tomatoes. I'm going to harvest one tomato, give it a taste, and if I like it I'm going to continue harvesting. If I don't like it I'm going to wait a little longer. That's how I normally follow for harvesting tomatoes. This plant is also producing nice ripening tomatoes. That's really good. One problem I see with this plant is powdery mildew. I see lots of powdery mildew on this plant. I normally don't see this heavy powdery mildew on other varieties like Tiny Tim or Aerogarden's red cherry, but this plant seems to be very prone to this powdery mildew. I'm going to keep removing these infected leaves so that it won't spread to other leaves. I think that's the best thing I can do. Look at this, it is all over the plant. So the only thing I can do is just remove the infected leaves and let the plant come up with new growth. So far so good. Even though it is taking time, it is finally producing these beautiful bright yellow tomatoes. That's really good news. It's day 124. Looks like some of the tomatoes are fully ripened and ready to harvest. They are looking very nice with a bright yellow or orangish color. So I'm going to harvest one today and give it a taste test. I can still feel they are pretty hard. Usually tomatoes get a little bit soft as they ripe, but this one is still looking a little hard. Anyway, let's give it a taste test. Oh, it's very tasty, very sweet. That's fantastic. Very good taste. While these tomatoes are ripening very well and producing lots of tomatoes, this powdery mildew problem still continues. Look at this plant. It is going really bad. Now I'm going to remove all these bad leaves. Now that most of the tomatoes ripened, I don't really see much value for the leaves anyway. So I'm going to remove all these leaves and set these plants up for next crop. I don't see any new development yet, but once I harvest these tomatoes and do a little bit of cleanup, I'm sure these plants are going to come back for the second crop. Actually, I can see a little bit of new development. Look at this branch, looking very fresh and healthy. So it's time to harvest all these tomatoes and clean up this garden. I'm going to do all that and set these plants up for next crop. I don't think anything new from this point to show. Most of the tomato plants survive for a long time, and I believe this one will also survive for a long time. So I'm going to stop the video here and let these plants continue producing tomatoes more and more. Alright, that is all for now. Thanks for watching and happy aero gardening.